So one of the things that are so frustrating shopping, first off, I'm not a big shopper, but second, shopping I find specifically for t-shirts to be frustrating. Every store is a different size. Every size is a little bit it's uncomfortable and weird and whatever. And I feel like as a guy that we don't get enough clothes made specifically for us, meaning like it's tailor fit for a real man. Maybe not, a man on the cover of Men's Health, but a real man. So you should check out True Classic because it accentuates, these t-shirts accentuate, I'm wearing one right now, by the way, accentuates the best parts about being a guy. Your shoulders, your thick, mean, scary arms, although maybe you don't have those. I don't. But it still makes you look kind of cool, right? And we want to give you a whole bunch of options to choose from. So obviously, they've got t-shirts, they've got hoodies, they've got jeans. You can get 3, 6, and 9 packs. The more you bundle, the more you save. And we want you to try True Classic. So whether you're bundling up for the cold or getting ready for spring, make sure you level up your clothes that actually fit right for you. Just go to our exclusive link, trueclassic.com/dangle. Again, it's trueclassic.com/dangle. Shop now to elevate your wardrobe today.
This is Agent Provocateur with Allan Walsh and Adam Wylde.
Welcome to another episode of Agent Provocateur. I see Adam Wylde. Adam, how are you?
I'm good, Allan. How are you? How are things? What's happening?
Busy time.
Yeah.
We've got last couple of days of the regular season. Players who are not in the playoffs are either bugging out or in discussions with their national team about world championships. Other players obviously are getting very much into playoff mode. So we'll see how that all plays out the next couple of days. There's going to be some really interesting first round matchups.
Yes.
I think Edmonton, LA for the 4th consecutive year. We've got a Battle of Ontario brewing.
Battle of Florida.
Montreal Canadiens heading into playoffs against Washington Capitals. Will there be a reprise of the 2010 first round with Montreal's Halak Spring? Let's see what happens there.
But there's some,
and of course, Dallas, Colorado.
Right.
We've got some first round matchups that could, with a different system, which we can talk about on a different day.
Yeah.
Could even be conference final matchups.
Well, exactly. And yeah, like I said, we'll save that for a different day. I am excited for Mikko Rantanen, noted Octagon client's revenge with the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars. I think that is the most interesting matchup just for the storylines. It's going to be awesome. But, one thing I do want to talk about is your client, Marc-André Fleury, and their playoff run and that sort of thing. But we're going to hit that at the end of the show because there's a couple of tougher things that we need to talk about in this show. And it first starts with your friend and a friend of many in the hockey community, one of the most well-liked people in the hockey community, Ray Shero's passing. This is, Ray was a Stanley Cup winner as a general manager in Pittsburgh. Obviously, He general managed many teams, was the AGM, was scout, was, somebody that people hired in to kind of look over programs. His father was obviously legendary coach of the Flyers in the 1970s. Ray was a guy that actually appeared on this podcast and seemed like just the most genial, fun guy. Allan, this came as a complete shock to you and everybody that knew him. He was a friend of yours. What was your initial reaction?
So I was on a flight from LA to Minneapolis, St. Paul for Flowers' last, what I knew to be would be his last regular season start. And I got a text message about an hour into the flight that Ray Shero had passed. And the person who sent me this message, I responded back, "You must be mistaken. Double check that, triple check that. It can't be right." And obviously I was overcome with emotion for the rest of the flight until we landed and I started making phone calls. And the Shero tree is an extensive tree in the NHL. It begins with Randy Sexton, Jason Bottrell, Tom Fitzgerald, Chuck Fletcher. These are all people that worked with him. Bill Guerin, people who worked with him, under him, people that he mentored, and who then went on to, in many cases, run their own teams.
Sure.
And he was so proud of the fact that he gave so many people their start in upper management and watch them get to the point where they soared on their own. Tom Fitzgerald, who was brought into New Jersey to be assistant general manager to Ray, took over for Ray when Ray was fired there. Mm-hmm. And there was never any ill will or bad feelings from Ray towards Fitzy. He was proud that if anybody was going to get the job after he was fired, that it was Fitzy. Mm-hmm. But I knew Ray. I probably first met him when he was director of hockey operations with the Ottawa Senators. It was his first job going over from the agent side to management and working with the team. And then he went to Nashville, where he became assistant general manager to David Poile. And it seemed like Ray was there forever. Mm-hmm. And did many deals with him, traveled all over the world with him. Ray and I were together in Czech Republic at tournaments, hanging out at the same hotel, breakfast, lunches, dinners, beers late at night, telling stories. And there was no greater storyteller than Ray Shero. Bar none, he told the greatest story. And he could tell stories about his dad. He could tell stories about the Flyers. And, half the stories were glistened with a little bit of bullshit. And he reveled in the fact that you knew there was a little bit of bullshit in there, but it made the story better. It made the story better. And then ultimately Ray got the job as the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Interestingly enough, Ray was offered 2 or 3 days before he got the Penguins job, the GM job of the Boston Bruins. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know this. He had gone into Pittsburgh. He met with Mario and other ownership there. He then left Pittsburgh to go to Boston to interview for the open GM job there, where he got the job. Mm-hmm. And then Ray, being the consummate negotiator, wasn't happy with the offer from the Bruins, called the Penguins and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I've been offered the job in Boston. I'm talking with them. Where are you guys at?" And they then said, "Get on a plane and come here. We'll get it. We'll get the deal done." So Ray got on the plane from Boston, flew back to Pittsburgh, and got the job in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
what a great story. That's very cool.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, Ray and I did many deals together. We negotiated Marc-André Fleury's deal. There was Ruslan Fedotenko. There was Pascal Dupuis. There was Peter Sikora. There was a trade for Miroslav Shatan. There was so much work that we did behind the scenes together. We fought like hell. We battled like hell. There was a time in a New Jersey bar at midnight negotiating Pascal Dupuis' contract, where Jason Bottrell was sitting next to Ray as his assistant, and Ray and I almost came to blows. And I had reached across the table and was literally going to hit him, and ended up leaving and got into the car service that had taken me out there and was heading back to the hotel. And halfway back to the hotel where I was staying at in Manhattan, so going towards the tunnel, he calls me and I pick up the phone and he says, "You want to come back?" And I said, "I want to keep talking." And I said, no, I don't want to keep talking. I am done with you. And ultimately went back to my hotel, went back to sleep. And he called Pascal the next day. I had updated Pascal on what happened in the at the meeting that night. And Ray says, "Well, Pascal, things didn't really go that well with Allan." He goes, "Yeah, so I hear." So I hear. So Ray said, I wanted to call you to tell you, it's nothing personal. Calm down. We'll get the deal done. I'm going to re-engage with Allan and we'll get something done. You're a valuable member of this team and of the Penguins family. And I don't want you to feel disrespected at all in any way. And ultimately Ray and I re-engaged and we got the deal done. But that's the nature of the relationship that we had. There's a moment that really stands out for me. And we've had several amazing nights. There was a night in Slovakia where we were staying in hotel rooms right next to each other at a tournament. And we were at the bar closed, went back to my room, and we had a mini bar filled with alcohol. So Ray and I crushed the mini bar till around 5 a.m. and the mini bar's empty. Yeah. Right? It's empty. And we're just sitting there telling stories and talking and laughing. And then Ray goes, "Your mini bar's empty." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Mine isn't." And we went over to his room and crushed his mini bar. And we're sitting there. We're like, "The sun's coming up." He's like, "Yeah, you think we should get some sleep?" And we ended up, going to, getting some sleep. And there was a 3:00 game and we're both walking into the rink to go to the game with bloodshot eyes and not feeling very good. But that was the kind of relationship you build over time. There was one other moment. It was 2009. Pittsburgh had just won the cup in Game 7 at Joe Louis Arena. It was Sid and Flower and those guys in Pitt, Malkin, their first cup together. And I'm on the ice. And I had seen Flower, and he and I embraced at center ice. And the next person I saw on the ice that I bumped into was Ray. And I walked over to Ray, and he had his arms outstretched, and we gave each other a big hug. And he whispered in my ear, "We wouldn't be here today without you."
Wow.
And and there was a bond between us, good days and bad days, pissed off. There were certainly times he was pissed off at me when I called him about an issue. But there was an underlying love between us. And as he was fired from Pittsburgh and moved on to New Jersey, we continued to have great times, and that bond remained very strong between us. There were times when he would call me and ask for advice about a particular job offer that he may have been considering, jobs that he had interviewed with. And a lot of people don't know this, but when Marc-André Fleury was traded at or near the deadline from Chicago to Minnesota, Ray was working as senior advisor to the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. And Ray was instrumental behind the scenes facilitating that trade. Marc-André Fleury would never be a Minnesota Wild if not for the work Ray did behind the scenes making that happen. And so we know that Bill Guerin and Ray were very close. Ray traded for Bill at the 2009 deadline, and he went on to win the cup that year with the Pens, was a key member of the team during the playoffs. The next year, Billy went to the Philadelphia Flyers camp on a tryout and was released at the end of camp. And after calling his wife, the second call he made was to Ray. And Ray invited him to come in the pit. They sat down, they talked about his future, and Ray gave him a job working in the organization. And that was, Billy's first job with the team. And he started, player development, scouting, rose to assistant GM, and then ended up moving over to the Wild where he's GM now. So that's all part of the Ray Shero tree across the NHL. So I'm at the Wild game last week, and I go up to the press box. The Wild have their own box. I walked in. Billy had invited me to come up after the first period. I walked in. Billy and I gave each other a hug, and I broke into tears. Mm-hmm. I think Billy was embarrassed for me standing around because there were a bunch of people in the box, and he was kind of trying to shield me from them because he didn't want anyone to see. But it was
very kind. That's very nice.
It's just the connection that we all have and the pain that we all felt at his passing. And what I came to find out was that there was a very, very small circle of people that were even aware that Ray was ill. And that circle widened just a tiny little bit the last 4 or 5 days before he passed. But that was what Ray wanted. He did not want to burden people. He did not want people to know. And that's certainly his right. But at the same time, from my own perspective, I really wish I could have told him one time how much I loved him and how much I valued the relationship. So, Ray, if you're listening, I hope you hear that now.
He's probably smiling and laughing, like he did plenty of times. He's known for that laugh and known for that smile, and he gave us plenty of that on the show when he was on last year. It's hard to believe, Allan, and I'm looking. I'm just looking at just generally his hockey page, right? This is a guy who was an NCAA player, and then switched to the Ottawa Senators organization 93-94. Basically, except for 1 year, an unbroken streak from 93-94 to this year. That's an incredible legacy and incredible career in hockey. And I think sometimes, when we remember great people and accomplished people, it's not just about what they did. You mentioned it off the top. It's about the people that they mentored and brought along and elevated along the way. And there are some pretty excellent and outstanding. You just mentioned two of them. Tom Fitzgerald, Bill Guerin, two current general managers that are there directly because of Ray. And I think it's a testament to his legacy. And I'm sorry, Allan, this is the other thing, is that as a friend of yours, and it's hard to know what to say, honestly, but I'm sorry for this loss for you, because I know he meant a lot to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Adam.
And listen, I love the stories that you have. This is a heavy subject, and it is a heavier show, and sometimes we have to hit heavier shows. Chris Simon passed away in the fall, and it is, it was announced Monday by the Concussion Legacy Foundation, which
of which I'm a member of the board of directors.
Intimately involved, yes. That he was diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I wouldn't have been able to pronounce that word before I met Allan Walsh, but now I know it quite well. And it's important, I think, that we discuss Allan, not just that he died, it's the manner in which he died. Because this is what makes CTE so insidious. Chris Simon took his own life.
Yes.
And the family wants people to know that. That's a key detail. I'm gonna quote Dr. Ann McKee, who's the chief of neuropathology at Boston Healthcare, at the VA Boston Healthcare System,
and she's also the number one researcher at the Boston University Medical Center, the CTE Center, and Unite Brain Bank, and is the recognized leader in CTE research and the testing of brains for CTE.
So if anybody knows it, it's going to be Dr. Ann McKee. And she said, Mr. Simon had severe CTE pathology in areas of the brain involved with cognition and mood regulation, and it is likely CTE contributed to his memory problems, depression, and apathy. Chris was suffering tremendously from CTE. This is from his family, excuse me. Chris was suffering tremendously from CTE. We saw him declining, but did not know where to turn for help. That's from Chris Simon's parents and sister in a statement. Chris's short-term memory issues were ongoing for many years. He also learned he had lost most of his hearing, had daily headaches, light sensitivity, paranoia, was easily frustrated with tasks, had extreme anxiety, difficulty navigating in a vehicle, apathy, lack of feeling and emotion, impulsivity, distancing himself from those who meant the most to him, had executive dysfunction, meaning he couldn't plan or problem solve, and he also had suicidal thoughts. And according to the family, he had distanced himself from his family and friends for the last 3 years. And this is the quote that really stuck out to me, Allan. You can tell me what you think here. This one hits when you think about your own family members. The Chris we knew had been gone for quite some time. That's usually a conversation that you're having at the end of someone's life in their 80s or 90s when they're suffering from a degenerative brain disease. And I say that specifically because my grandmother passed and she had dementia. And so we knew for a very long time that the Nana that I'd grown up with was no longer there. And this is a man who is not at that age. This is a man who had decades left to live. So when they say the Chris we knew had been gone for quite some time, that really hits. And I said, and then they go on to say, looking back, we now realize Chris likely started suffering from CTE in his late 20s and early 30s. Our entire family suffered for many years as we saw our son, brother, father, husband slip away from us, and we couldn't do anything to help him. Allan, devastating statement. That must have taken a ton from the family to put out there. That's a lot of bravery. What is your response to this? You're somebody that's championed the acknowledgement of this cause by the NHL, but also its research with Dr. Chris Nowinski, and obviously, the Concussion Legacy Foundation, Dr. Ann McKee. You were intimately involved in this. What was your initial reaction to this?
Well, we know that CTE is a brain withering disease, and I think we are sadly scratching the surface as to how many athletes, not just in hockey, but in other contact sports, are currently suffering from the early stages of CTE, to those who are former athletes, retired right now, who are suffering from maybe the mid to late stages of the disease. And it is a disease, and the only way possible to get CTE It is not found in the regular population.
Mhm.
It is caused by repetitive head impacts and the accumulation of those impacts over time. That's how you get CTE. There is no other way to get CTE. And the studies that have been clinical studies released over the last 6-7 years now definitively prove how you get CTE, what causes CTE. There is no longer a debate. There was a debate long ago.
Mhm.
In 2016, the NFL admitted the link between repetitive head impacts and CTE. The U.S. government, the U.S. military, the Canadian government, the National Institute of Health, everybody recognizes the cause of CTE except Gary Bettman and the NHL. And they have consistently said over time, hockey doesn't cause CTE. There might be an incidental case here and there, but that doesn't prove anything. We need more research. But they've been saying that for 20 years.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, we may have needed more research. And we still continue to. Right now, there is a major study ongoing that will ultimately lead to being able to diagnose CTE in the living. And that's going to be huge, because the only way to confirm a CTE diagnosis right now is posthumously, by literally dissecting a brain and taking brain tissue and looking at it under a microscope. That's the only way to definitively diagnose it. So Chris Simon, his family donated his brain to the Boston University CTE Center and the Unite Brain Bank. Bobby Hull, one of the greatest legends to ever play the game, his wife donated his brain to the CTE Center. And what we're finding right now, so 19 former NHL players' brains over the years, actually it's 20, and their brains have been donated to the CTE Center. And out of the 20 brains that have been donated, 19 have been confirmed to have CTE. Now, people hear CTE and they don't process or understand what it means to the player's day-to-day life and to their families. I've had the opportunity to, in my work with the Concussion Legacy Foundation, to get to know some of the families, NFL players who've passed, and it was confirmed after their death through a brain donation that they had CTE. And I've gotten to know them. I've gotten close to them, and I've heard their stories. And what you read regarding Chris Simon's family is a very similar story that I have heard and listened to and watched the tears in the family's eyes as they recounted a loved one who was alive but no longer there.
Yeah.
It was not the person that they knew and loved. It was not the father that they loved. It was not the husband that they loved, who was part of their life, such an important part of their lives. It was the shell of what they were before CTE ravaged their brains. And the Simon family said something else yesterday. The unfortunate feeling of anger is also present due to the negligence of a professional league turning a blind eye to CTE and other significant brain injuries sustained in the sport of hockey. So Gary Bettman talks about the NHL family. The NHL family, we're a family. And the implication is we take care of our family members. Every single time a player like Bobby Hull or Chris Simon is found to have CTE, you know what Gary Bettman says? You know what the NHL says? No comment. People called the NHL and asked for comment from Gary Bettman after Bobby Hull's diagnosis was released publicly, and the official response back was no comment. Yesterday, media called the NHL asking, does Gary Bettman have anything to say about this? No comment. So they will continue to put their heads in the sand and ignore the issue. They will ignore CTE. They will ignore the carnage out there among retired players and their families. They will do almost nothing in the realm of CTE prevention. Everything that we are doing here, the Concussion Legacy Foundation has a helpline. Anybody can call free of charge. If you have issues, if you need help, if you need resources, they are there to help you. And they've done amazing work that I am so proud to be associated with such an incredible organization. So proud. But the league has to step up and take responsibility for what is happening out there and join with the Players Association and say, we know together what causes CTE. Now let's work together to prevent it as much as we can. We're never going to eliminate it. Nobody wants to take hitting out of hockey, right? Nobody wants to dramatically change the game. There will always be hitting. There will always be concussions. That's not the discussion that we're having today. It's not about that. It's reducing blows to the head as much as we can. As Ken Dryden has said many times, yes. Reduce, 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 and then go from there. Mm-hmm. And Ken Dryden is a very intelligent guy who knows this game backwards and forwards. He wrote an entire book just addressed to Gary Bettman about this issue.
About Steve Montetor. Yes.
Absolutely. And he has proposed a penalty for all checks to the head. The severity of the penalty commensurate with the severity of the blow. Whether it's an accidental blow, an intentional blow, it doesn't matter. It's a penalty. Behavior on the ice will modify based on tweaks to the rule. Not take checking out of the game. Just have players check in a different way.
Right.
Have players more careful to avoid the head. right?
Right.
The game now is about speed and skill. This is not the NHL of the 1970s. This is not the NHL of the Broad Street Bullies.
Yep.
That is an era that is gone. And it's a different league. And if you see the players coming up, if you go watch junior games, if you go watch 15-year-olds play, the top 15-year-olds in the country, it's an incredible game of speed and skill that didn't exist in the 1970s. And we can look into why that's the case one day if we ever want to discuss that in depth. But what the NHL continues to do in the realm of CTE is an embarrassment to hockey and an insult to the players and to the players' families. Gary Bettman has Chris Simon blood on his hands. This is on Gary. And all the other players that we've lost to CTE. And it is, and this is the issue, it's the tip of the iceberg. And that's what people have to understand. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of what's coming. That's the issue.
Chris Simon clearly had a family that cared immensely about him and were deeply affected by this. And this is the thing you have to remember. It's not just the player that's affected by this. It's the people around them, that their support system, their loved ones that are so affected by this. And you mentioned Bobby Hall. I remember, also Stan Mikita, more recently, when we started the show, Allan, I think there were 14 brains tested from the NHL and only 13 of those 14 had come up positive for CTE. In the 5 years we've done this show, that obviously has now expanded from, 13 to 19. And I'm looking at, I want to give people a sense a little bit of Chris Simon, the man, as much as you're able. Obviously he was an Octagon client, wasn't represented by you, but obviously one of the people that you work with. What was your sense of Chris Simon, the guy?
I did not know him personally well. I had met him a few times, more with teammates of his that I did represent. Like a lot of enforcers in the NHL, they were big, cuddly teddy bears off the ice. And the most gentle souls, kind, understated, humble, quiet, beloved by his teammates, absolutely beloved, and of course can go out on the ice. And he was one of the top enforcers of his era in the NHL. And many players who played that role are the sweetest, most lovable, huggable players off the ice. Yeah. And that's who Chris Simon was.
And true mark of what he meant to his teams. He was assistant captain in at least two places that I could find, Washington and Calgary. Big part of that Calgary run to the Stanley Cup Finals when they lost in that controversial game against Tampa in 2004. It's a sad story, and unfortunately one that will continue until there's at least some acknowledgement here. And frankly, there needs to be some changes. And I think, for anybody that's interested, that Ken Dryden book about Steve Montador it's tough. I did the audiobook version of it. Ken reads it. And, I read it probably 3 years ago, Allan, when we had him on, and I still think about it. It's one of those books that really stays with you. But what's important about it is that Ken proposes at the end, here's what you can do. Nobody wants to make hockey not a contact sport. Nobody wants to make hockey not a hitting sport. You cannot eliminate headshots from the game. Whenever we talk about this, the first thought from people is, well, you can't eliminate headshots. Yeah, we know. But there are things that you can do to bring the number of headshots down. It's like car accidents. Everybody knows there are going to be car accidents every single year. Everybody knows that. But are there things that a city can do to not eliminate, but reduce the amount of car accidents? Absolutely. Are there things that a city or a government can do to make you safer in your car? Demand more of the car companies themselves. You think about, Allan, the cars that you grew up driving in versus the cars we have now and how much safer they are now. Even something as small as seatbelts. These are the types of things that Ken is saying, listen, these are easy fixes. It's easy to implement this stuff. I don't understand why we don't. And that is perhaps the most frustrating part of that book, other than the way Steve Montador's life went, which it's worth knowing if you're a hockey fan, is that this is a relatively easy thing to take the next step on, and there's an outright refusal to do it.
And I would point out something else, and I completely agree with everything you just said, but the NFL has participated and partially funded several studies on CTE.
Yes.
The only thing Gary Bettman says about CTE is we need more studies. Nothing is definitive. Nothing is, there's no conclusions we can make from any of the studies to date. And it's always about needing more research. But the NHL has steadfastly refused to participate or fund in any way any studies related to CTE. And that just goes to show you where their true intentions lie on the issue. And
Yes.
that is just ignore it. And anybody who is on the side of bringing this issue to light, you're basically kissing a career working in and around the NHL goodbye.
Yeah.
Because they retaliate against you.
Yes, exactly. So we'll obviously continue to keep following this. It's a story that isn't going to go away. And as you said, tip of the iceberg. Now, shifting gears, and it's a tough subject to move off of eloquently, so I'll just come out flat out and say it. I don't know how to do that properly. But there is some good in the world, and there is some hope in the world, and it always seems to go back to Marc-André Fleury. And Allan, there's a picture of you. Well, it's actually a picture of Marc-André and his kids, but you're right behind him in his last regular season start for the Minnesota Wylde. I just want to know, obviously, as we kind of wind up this regular season, what was that like for you? This is a guy you met when he was 15 years old. He said on this show that your French was terrible. And that's one of the things that stuck out to him about you at first. But I mean, this is a really long-term partnership the two of you have had. And you've worked through a career with multiple All-Star appearances, multiple Stanley Cups. This is about as good as it can be for a goaltender. So for you, how does it all feel?
It's very emotional. Mark called me and he's like, hey, there was it looks like now my last regular season start is going to be against San Jose. And that was last week. And he said, I don't have any friends or family coming in. It's too last minute. And I said, well, I'm going to be there. He's like, well, the game's tomorrow. I go, I'm going to be there. And I got on a plane and made it into Minnie. I wanted to be at that game. I was at his first one, and I wanted to be at his last one. Now, he did play part of the third period in Calgary on the road, and who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs.
Yes.
I mean, he may play games, he may not play games. But as you said, I started working with Marc-André when he was 15. He's 40 now. In many ways, we all grew up together. He was with his wife, Vero, when I first met them at 15, 16, 17, 18. She was sitting next to him when he was drafted number 1 overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins. I was at their wedding. They have 3 beautiful, incredible kids. And I couldn't be more proud of the adults they have become, the parents they have become, because you spend a few minutes with their kids and you realize these kids must have some really special parents.
Yeah.
The kids just give off that feeling when you interact with them. And I know that my connection with the family will be there forever. But it also will be a little bit sad not having the privilege of watching him play, which is something I always took tremendous joy in watching him play. He was so much fun to watch. It was always fun talking to him before games. It was always fun talking with him after games about the game, the insight he would share, calling me up. He was on After Hours Saturday night. A great interview with Scott Oak. And they were talking about the prank on Brandon Duhaime. And Flower had called me that morning really early. It was around 7 a.m. And he goes, hey, Allan, do you know what time the Home Depot opens here? And I'm like, you're on the road. He goes, yeah, I got to get to Home Depot right when they open. I go, what are you up to? What are you up to? He's like, well, you'll see. And we all saw he bought a car jack. He bought pounds of dirt, flowers. And he ended up taking the tires off, jacking the car up, taking the tires off, and he kept the lug nuts.
Amazing.
I remember he texted me. He's like, I got the lug nuts.
I feel like that might be the part of the NHL he misses the most. Like he's just what a bright light. So the other thing we found out is that they were building a sort of, I don't want to call it retirement home, but a home for the family in Vegas, and that they've decided they're going to sell that and stay in the Minneapolis area. They really have fallen in love with it.
They really have. The kids play on soccer teams and hockey teams, and they love their schools, and the kids have made great friends. And Vero and Mark love the community as the Minnesota community as a place to raise kids. It is a wonderful, wonderful area to raise your kids, and they've recognized that. So their plan is right now to plant some seeds and stay there longer term, which is wonderful.
Okay. Well, I will save the questions for what his future in hockey might be until after the season is over, because it feels like it ain't over, but we don't know that for sure. So, Allan,
given that he's in Minnesota, who knows what happens if he ever gets the itch?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And maybe look out for him joining some beer leagues near you. It could be kind of fun, a bit of a ringer. So Allan, listen, the Wylde are going to the playoffs. You got a lot of clients going to the playoffs. This time of year, very quickly before we go, what kind of anxieties are these guys feeling? Just generally speaking, not Marc-André Fleury, but everybody. When you've gone 30 years with players going into the playoffs. What are the things that are going through their minds? Because as a fan, we're like, let me at it. I'm so excited. How do the players feel this time of year?
Very similar to the way the fans feel. In every conversation I'm having with a player who is heading towards the playoffs, there is an extra bounce in their step. There's a certain excitement, enthusiasm in their voice. There's anticipation. There's excitement. This is what they play for.
Mm-hmm.
And players dream of winning. They want to win. And especially players who in the past may have won or come close to winning, they know how hard it is and how lucky they have to be to get back into a position where they have a chance to win again.
Yeah.
Right? So the day before the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs, every player has a vision in his mind of what if. And they're going out there and, first round, they could go 7 games, they could go 4 games, but everybody's who's participating, this is what they play for all year.
Yep.
And it's playoff time. And it's when legacies are cemented. It's when reputations for being clutch players develop, and the ability to for players to reinvent themselves in the moment is it's a wonderful thing. And it's a wonderful thing to watch. It's great for the fans. It's great for the sport. We know NHL revenues have been jumping year over year.
Yes.
TV ratings, the interest in the game. I mean, this year with the Four Nations, with the OV chase, there's been a tremendous spotlight on the sport this year, and the ability to have some dramatic playoff games and maybe a surprise Stanley Cup winner. The possibilities are infinite.
It's the best. And a lot of young teams kind of making a jump for. I'm thinking specifically Ottawa and Montreal, teams jumping in. St. Louis is such a crazy story, winning 12 games in a row, being completely out of it, potentially selling at the deadline, and then just going on that run. Especially with, a fired coach who was hired, and then, Jordan Binnington, who turned it on after Four Nations because of the confidence boost. There's so much going on, Allan. So very, very excited. And so listen, by the time we catch up, the first round will be well underway. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. But until then, I hope you have a great week leading into the weekend, and best of luck to all your clients on their playoff series as well.
Thanks, Adam. And for those that don't know, Adam just had a birthday. Jesse just had a birthday.
That's right.
So happy birthday, guys. We love
you,
you. See you next time.
This has been Agent Provocateur with Allan Walsh and Adam Wylde. Follow Allan Walsh on Twitter @WalshA. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts by searching Agent Provocateur and hitting the subscribe button. YouTube.com/SDPN.